Reverend John Lilek is an ordained spiritual minister, certified teacher, healer, and medium through the Universal Spiritualist Association. Reverend Lilek is founder and director of the Universal Spiritual Ministries Association. He's co-pastor of a temple of love and light located in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And he's also well known as a teacher, tutor, and coach, helping people to discover, train, and develop their own spiritual gifts and talents, as well as to achieve their higher potential in life. He teaches and helps people across America, as well as in Ireland and the United Kingdom. Well, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve, and it's a pleasure to be on here.
Well, we're happy to have you, John. I know you've got lots to share, and I'm really looking forward to the interview. I want to ask you firstly, John, just to tell us the address of your new website. I know that you've recently launched a new website, because I'd like you to tell us the address for that, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Steve. It's www.universalspiritualministries.org.
Great. Well, thank you, John. We'll be checking that out. Well, John, it's great to have you here. My first question for you is, when you first discovered your connection to spirits and your mediumship?
Oh, that was easy. I didn't even understand what was happening. Since age 5, I was actually channeling past lives and didn't even realize it. I'll give you an example. Here I grew up in a neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, a suburb, Parma, which was notoriously prejudiced in its day back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And here I was channeling. I'd be a friendly little kid, waving to everybody, saying hello, and then all of a sudden, if they didn't answer back, all of a sudden this little slave boy come out of me. I'd say, hi, no mo, and I'd start talking. My mother would look at me and say, what's your problem? And here I was seeing all these different past lives. Since, like I said, age 5, and it just started opening up into physical phenomena, seeing spirit, talking to spirit, hearing spirit, and it just kept going. And you know how the path goes. You're led from one teacher to another with many experiences between.
Absolutely. Well, John, I want you to help us by telling us how you connect with spirit. So can you give our listeners maybe an explanation about how mediumship works?
Oh, very good. It's we have great success with many of our students, and the secret to connecting with spirit is really, the secret was within ourselves. If we could see into our own past in this life experience with vivid detail, exercising that part of the mind that rarely gets exercised. As we see things, in our present life, we process everything with the natural senses, the 5 senses of smell, touch, taste, hear, and seeing. And when we process things, it goes into memory. And if we could see things crystal clear and go into our memory and exercise, it's like a muscle that's never been used too often. It's like a filing cabinet with all this information, but very seldom do we delve into it. The greatest tool is to see into our own past with vividness. And if we could see into our own past when we tune into another vibration of another person, we can tune into their spirit and all of their loved ones around them in the same clarity. It's not so difficult. We make it difficult, but when you think about it, each of us have been a medium in our own right. And I have little criteria that I kind of mentioned and relate to people. For example, it all starts out with that so-called gut feeling we all have. And when we act on it, everything happens exactly like it was shown to us. When we change our mind, that's when everything kind of goes wacky. And then later in life, when we were in school and we were studying, we took that pencil or pen and tapped our forehead, the third eye. Yet no one taught us it, but we were opening and awakening that third eye to help us to concentrate deeper. Many times people will ask me, well, how do you know if I have mediumship? Well, you could see in people, like, for example, by their magnetism, by their energy, people come to them for advice. I always ask people, how many times do people come to you for advice? And they'll kind of like nod and smile, yes, and affirm it. And can you recall those special moments when you were giving advice, you were talking off the top of your head, had no idea what you were saying, and yet the amazing thing was people would come back to you with affirmation saying you were right on about that. So what happened, actually? We stepped aside, the egoic mind stepped aside, we allowed infinite intelligence through, and infinite intelligence gave those individuals what they needed to know and moved on. And here we don't remember, but yet people benefited from that, talking off the top of our head, so to speak. So in essence, each of us are mediums in our own right, whether we're creating art, composing, inventing, building. Everything in life is of creation, and that is coming from a higher source. Whether it's being a psychic, giving messages and readings, or expressing it through our own work in everyday life.
Well, I like that description, John, because many people think of mediumship as purely communicating with people that have passed to spirit. And as you said, really we're all channeling. We're all connected to our higher selves in spirit. And when we're highly creative, we do channel from spirit, whether that's music or artwork, writing, etc. So that's a great way to put it. Can you tell us, John, how best to develop mediumship?
The best way, and we actually had the training all along from the very, like many people, I'll ask them, do you believe you chose this lifetime? And most of them will say yes. And then I'll ask them another question. Do you believe that you chose your parents? And they'll say yes. And then I'd say, gotcha. Because you also chose all of your life experiences. And those life experiences, the worst ones, so to speak, that you would look at, the most horrendous ones, the experiences of abuse, mentally, physically, sexually, were some of the greatest experiences that we could ever experience because, and they'll look at me strange, like, how could I want that? Well, William Shakespeare best put it, all the world's a stage and we are but its players. And in this lifetime, many play the different roles. Some play the role of the villain. And those experiences, we feel the suffering and the pain. We feel that as the victim. But we also become the teacher in each and every experience because in that suffering we experience, we develop something. We develop compassion and sensitivity. That sensitivity and compassion helps us to read in many people. We could feel their pain and their suffering as well. So when you think about it, Steve, we were given tools all along the way. And spirits revealed our gifts to us all throughout our life, and most people don't even realize it. I'll bet many of your listeners right there can relate to some of the things I'll mention. For example, many times people will have articles of jewelry that disappear in their homes, and they seem to reappear in other locations, and Spirit's actually showing you your gifts of apportation by using your own energy, because the key to Spirit is no spirit can manifest in any size, shape, or form without using some form of human energy, our energy. And when they manifest, and how they manifest, they're actually showing you your gifts. For example, if you've seen Spirit with your own eyes, you're caught off guard. The normal condition is being passive. You are being shown that, and Spirit drew from you your ectoplasm, which they needed to actually show themselves manifesting. So that could be materialization. When you see the Spirit over someone's face, and you're the only one that's seen it, you could have transfiguration. But the gifts go on and on. It's all up to us. The key to the universe is manifesting. Later in life, many of us become aware. We're awakened, and we want to do something else besides working at the same job for the rest of our lives and perhaps making someone else wealthy, and we feel that we're not contributing in the way we should. Many of us deep down inside, and my wife Greta and I have been blessed to travel all over the United States and see all these wonderfully gifted, talented people everywhere. And first of all, it begins with a desire. You must have a desire first to help people, not for personal gain and ego and all of that. When we go strive for the higher gifts, we put it out there. The key to the universe is ask, and ye shall receive. Come unto me, saith the Lord. If I do not ask, how do I expect to receive? Many people misunderstand how spirit works. They say, well, I'll put everything in God's hands. I won't ask. I'll just trust that it'll be there. But from the spirit side, they cannot bring things into our life because it would be meddling. What if they gave us perhaps that person in our life, and yet we're still clinging on to past experiences? Karmically, spirit would be meddling, and they would be held accountable for that. We have to clear those slates to open up clear manifesting. That's the first step. Removing the blockages that have held us back all of our lifetime.
And John, which would you say is the most striking example of mediumship that you've experienced?
Oh, yes, I could go on with the whole list, but I'll tell you one that made me a believer, a rock. I've had experiences throughout my life, and one of the most common, I came from a broken home like many other people, and my parents would argue. I would describe my father and my mother's relationship as one of water and one of earth, and together they made blood, so to speak. I say this jokingly, but they were both great people. My father had suffered a tragic death. We won't go into it, but I never really had closure, but I had an awakening during that time. Well, through a series of events, I was led from one teacher to a great teacher, a physical medium named Reverend Dr. James G. Tingley in Toledo, Ohio. And here he was a true physical medium. He had developed materialization, developed trumpet. I've even seen the aluminum trumpet levitating in full natural light and speaking up to 3 voices. He had all the gifts like precipitation and upwards all developed. Well, he sat in a cabinet. About my third actual seance was a materialization seance, but the amazing thing was it was just myself and Reverend Tingley. There were no other sitters. He sat in this cabinet, which was like a little enclosure with a black curtain in front of him, and this dim red light shining right on it. And I sat in the chair, and I seen a blue mist come out of the cabinet. And the gatekeeper, his gatekeeper, Mabel, instructed me to rise from my seat and begin walking toward the cabinet, and then told me to stop. And out of the cabinet came my own father, and he looked much younger, like in his 20s, kind of like Field of Dreams, when Kevin Costner seen his father as the young ball player. Well, it was the same experience. I had seen my own father come out of there. We stood face to face. I couldn't even tell you, Steve, how long it was. It could have been an eternity as far as I'm concerned. But we were communicating telepathically. I understood what he was saying, and he understood what I was saying. And the amazing thing was we both knew that the energy was waning, so we had to say our so longs for now. So as I reached my hand out to extended to his, he reached and shook my hand. Well, on the earth plane, my father was a tool and die maker, had very strong hands, and when he shook hands, it was like a vice grip. Well, when I felt his grip, I could feel the flesh, the fingers, and that bone-crushing grip. The only difference was it was icy cool. It was the ectoplasm around him. And when I felt that, I looked in his eyes, and I immediately broke down. And I said, broke down, and I started to cry. I says, oh, my God, I'm in the best of both worlds right here, right now. And Steve, from that moment on, I became a believer. And by seeing this, you become the rock because you have your proof. I only pray that people around the world can have these experiences to know that all is well with the spirit world, and that we could go on with full closure and not suffer the grieving, because in essence, they go into higher progression. They're no longer suffering, and they are here with us to help us and guide us. And how do you know spirits around you? Like some of the common little tests you could do is if your ears normally don't ring and you start feeling that ringing continuously in your ears. When you feel those cobwebby touches all over your face, your fingers, your hands, your neck, your back, your hair, that's what the spirit touch feels like.
Thank you, John. Can you explain to us, John, why physical mediumship seems so rare nowadays? I know in a previous show we were talking about the fact that Neptune is now back in Pisces, the sign that it rules. The last time that occurred was in the 1800s when we saw this huge increase in mediumship, seances, channeling, and spiritualist phenomenon. And then Neptune is back in Pisces, and it makes me wonder whether we'll see a shift in some of the mediumistic phenomena that we experience.
We
So,
are.
what are your
We
feelings
are.
on physical mediumship and any shifts we may see now that Neptune is back in Pisces?
We are going to see a lot more communication from the high ascended masters, not just of this world, but of many worlds. I can actually prove that right now in the demonstrations that we give with the Transfiguration. Like the book, The Ancient Mystical White Brotherhood by Frater Aked, it makes mention of master teachers of other worlds, not just of this earth, but never of this earth. And we actually, in Transfigurations, people have actually seen up to 8 different species of extraterrestrial transfigure right over me, and I'm sure other mediums as well. We're getting that influence from higher worlds. And I do believe it's coming back, but people are expecting it in the old Victorian way, where you have to sit in a cabinet and have very subdued lights. I'm actually doing demonstrations with direct red light right on me instead of subdued. And instead of a cabinet, I just sit in front of a black curtain with black clothing just to highlight the ectoplasm better. But you don't even need a cabinet for the materialization. They actually see many times now the ectoplasm come right out of me off to the sides. I set the lighting precisely right on my face centered so that the ectoplasm could form around me and above me and they could see the materialized spirit. It's different. It's finer in texture. We are noticing that our children in this day and age are very gifted. A prime example, I was teaching a trumpet mediumship class in Tacoma, Washington, and a spiritualist minister, Reverend Sheila, her granddaughter, Tanisha, asked to sit in it, and she did with her little student-sized trumpet. Well, to my surprise and to my delight, I was getting news from her grandmother that her trumpet's actually levitating and whispering. So you see, many of the children are natural because they don't have. It's a different energy than we had when we were brought up. They're trusting. They're pure in many ways of heart versus the adulthood now. You ask why the decline, and I believe there's a lot of reasons. I believe it was partially in many things: competitiveness, control, abusing the gifts perhaps, but it's coming back, and that's part of my mission, along with others, is to work silently behind the scenes to the like-minded, the true seekers of the higher gifts. Because nothing like evidential mediumship when you could see and talk direct to spirit. You know, it's nice to receive a reading and everything like that, but when you could talk to them direct, it's like a picture's worth 1,000 words. When you see that image and you see them smiling, and many times when I do readings, I'll see that spirit, what they look like near their death. They'll even give me all the different causes, the different things on their death certificate. If there are 2 or 3 different things that have caused their demise, that's one thing. But immediately they'll show me a picture, a photo that their relatives have and describe. Well, they're in their 20s or 30s in their prime. So I actually see them looking much younger when they come to them.
It's wonderful, isn't it, John, to live life knowing that we survive beyond this lifetime, beyond this physical death, and that there's much more beyond this physical experience.
It truly is, Steve. We've actually had our own experiences as children many times, and I'm sure many people can relate to this one. When we've had those dreams of falling from the sky, and all we remember is the falling part and being woken up like a sudden jolt. When our astral body, via the silver cord, realigns itself with the physical body and touches the thousands of nerve endings. It's like an electrical shock that wakes us up. And yet, we were all going to higher places with our teachers to receive programming in our subconscious mind. All that knowledge is stored within. I tell people, the wisdom of the master teacher is already within each and every one of us. But like Christ and Buddha and many other great master teachers spoke of, to get into that Christ mind, that second mind, the subconscious mind, we must see everything in the conscious mind as a spiritual experience and lessons of value, learning, not as a bad or bitter experience, or that veil is continuously closed. It's like an awakening that must happen. It's beautiful.
How did you become introduced to physical mediumship, John?
Well, it's kind of funny. I always believed in keeping an open mind. I didn't quite understand at age 5 about past lives, but yet I was doing it naturally. And at that time, back in the early 1960s, I really didn't have access to any knowledge to that. But I think it really awakened when I had an industrial accident. Working subcontracting years ago, because I was a builder, and I had an accident where I fell off the scaffold, and all the tools fell down on me, including my own drill, a commercial drill with a foot-long drill bit right into my scalp, tore my scalp like a bed sheet, cracked my skull, and from that day on, all this physical phenomena started happening. I started seeing spirit manifesting. Like my teacher would jokingly say, like a teapot, you have to have a crack to let the light in, I guess. And so in my case, that's what kind of opened it right there, an accident. And there have been cases where other mediums have had that happen with trauma. We're not telling people to go ahead and have head injuries to open it up, but it can come naturally. Many times children see spirit, but over years, they're told by their parents, well, you're imagining these things, so it's kind of suppressed, because as time goes on, we develop the same fears and prejudices of our surroundings, our parents, or whoever raised us. But to be free, the key to it all is to be open-minded and to desire it. And by that and by the higher laws of spirit, they can open the door, because high spirit, highly evolved spirit, would never manifest if it would bring fear or making us uncomfortable. They wait until we become more enlightened, more knowledge. And there's ways that spirit actually enlightens us, different techniques.
Have you been to Brazil as well, John? Didn't you go to Brazil with your work?
No, Tanya and Greg Stewart, some really good friends of ours in California. Tanya actually worked side by side with John of God for 20 years. My wife Greta and I were just talking about that possibly going this fall, but we're kind of in the process of trying to build our spiritual retreat up in Maine too. We want to build a retreat where other like-minded people could come, teachers from all over the world and mediums can work there, because we want to provide a place where people can receive spiritual healing and spiritual growth. Brazil would be a great place to visit, because it is like a very spiritual, it's one of the meccas of the world.
It is. There's a huge amount of channeling and mediumship going on in Brazil, isn't there?
Yes, there is. I've heard some amazing stories of a young medium, actually from Peru, a young lady that actually was channeling spirit, and 2 Catholic priests came and were investigating her. And after one of her channeling sessions, they were actually in tears, and they thanked her over and over, because she actually revealed to them many of the teachings of the Bible that were far deeper than they ever imagined. So it comes in all sizes, shapes, and forms, and those gifts are all over the world. And that's what we're looking forward to, is seeing the awakening, the beauty and the diversity of the gifts with everyone. It should be of a light workers, of people wanting to seek to go to a higher source, because when we work together, there's enough room for everyone in this world. And there is no room for competitiveness and jealousy, because each of us have been blessed with so many talents. If we would only look within, that's the key.
Do your guides ever tell you, John, about future events in the world? In the world generally?
Normally, I stay out of that. I trust. I see that with people in things that have been even 4 or 5 years or 15 years up the road. But as far as that, I don't see any events of turmoil. I see instances like this whole entire, since we measured society and history, we're going to have floods, we're going to have earthquakes, we're going to have financial collapses and things like this. This is inevitable. But I don't see an end to civilization. I believe in being an optimist, and like all of us, Steve, life is eternal. If we, in this life, if we do the best we can, as long as we can, until that moment, then we've lived life well. If we follow the path of spirit and allow them to open the doors for us and to walk that path, we really have nothing to worry about, nothing to fear whatsoever.
Well, John, we're going to take a short commercial break in a moment. I've got another question I wanted to ask you before we take that break. Could you tell us a little about your guides, John? It's always interesting to hear about a medium spirit guides. Could you tell us about yours?
Sure. I actually was channeling some of them and didn't even know it. I remember my guides Tulip and Opal, my messengers. And Tulip is feisty and ornery, and I actually have her recorded on cassette tape in a trumpet seance. And our guides are like us. If we're multitaskers, they're multitaskers. And she doesn't miss anything in any details, and so she brings all that. She says, I have a mic, in a trumpet seance, she said, I have a microscope that sees around corners, in a joking way, but that's how she is. My spirit chemist physician, Dr. Graham, he actually, on the earth plane, he actually invented the graham cracker, and a lot of people didn't realize. They thought, oh, it's just a tasty cracker. But it was actually invented in his day for the purpose of helping people suppress the need for alcohol. It was for alcoholism. And so I made an oath back in 1986 to never touch a drop of alcohol in respect and reverence to him. One of my doctors of philosophy, Dr. Kramer, I actually have a silk precipitation with all their faces on it from Dr. Hank Keeling, where they used the pigment of a carnation flower, and the images appeared on fine woven linen just as clear as a photograph. So I can see their faces clearly, but they are very dedicated. And there's actually a science through the seance room. We could actually, all of us could tell who our spirit guides are just by the size, shape, and color of the lights. For example, Steve, if you ever see those sky blue colored orbs, those are spirit doctors.
Oh, really? The blue ones?
Yes. And when you see the white, a little variations with a little white in it, that's usually a chemist physician. And that's your main doctor. That's the one that when you were having those dreams of falling from the sky, that's your protector right there. That was actually protecting your physical body while other teachers were taking your astral body places. This doctor stood by, protected you, made sure no one came in the room, turned on a light or touched you because they could have snapped that silver cord. Many times we receive healings in the middle of the night. This is the doctor that has been watching over us. When you see sky blue lights with a little bit of yellow, that's a doctor teacher. The yellow represents a teacher of some sort. When you see that in an orb, even in variations, when you see the light red orbs, those are Indians. Depending on what land you're from, if you're from Australia, it may be the Aborigine. But nevertheless, it is the Indian that is the medium's best friend, because they're the protectors. I could tell you amazing stories of how they use quantum physics to protect us. But that's another chapter in itself. When you see the large orbs, those are usually the master teachers, and when you study them closely, you can actually see multicolors, 4 or 5 different colors, and we've actually had them blown up, cropped the orb, and you can actually see the faces in them. You can actually see your guides' faces by adding programs to your computer to add pixels, and when you crop them, you can actually see all the spirit faces in the orbs. because that's a projection of spirit right there.
Yeah, I have pictures of orbs with faces in them, and also crystals with faces in them. I really like to collect pictures and photography that show faces of spirit.
Yes.
It's exciting. Well, John, we'll take a short commercial break, and then we'll be back to continue the conversation.
Wonderful, Steve.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at PsychicAccess.com.
Okay, whatever.
Welcome back, John.
Like I said, the center, our spiritual path, what we're planning on doing.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I'd love to know what you have planned in your work in the next 2 years. You mentioned the retreat, and I'm sure our listeners would like to hear more about what you have planned in your spiritual work in future.
Yes, I'd be glad to accentuate on that about the vision and how spirits opened the door for us, including how donors came and how we're going through our 501c. I could explain everything. It's been an amazing adventure. We're not on the air right now, are we?
Yes, we're back on air, John. Yeah, so you can go ahead and tell us about your plans.
Yes, it's been through a step-by-step process that Spirit's been guiding me, and my lovely wife, Greta, she's actually from England herself. We were actually soulmates. We found out about each other that we had 9 past lives. I actually seen it, the exact incident, 190 years ago with my own death, and here she recorded it 4 or 5 years ago in past life regression, the exact scene. So we're guided to start a spiritual retreat up in Maine and up in the mountains. And one friend was led to us and said he owned property, and he wants to donate 14 acres on a mountaintop when we become 501c3 and to have a center, because people believe in something that we're not going as a religious organization, it's a spiritual organization. We won't call it a church, we'll call it a center, because we do not necessarily want to denote Christianity, because there are so many valuable teachings from all the different religions. And we try to find the golden threads that unite people instead of separate them. And we welcome all, because that's been our mission, is to train people, to help them, to counsel them along the way. We don't make a lot of money. We're traveling in a 2004 Chevy Malibu with about almost 200,000 miles on it. It's about time for a new one. So you see, we're not living lavishly. My wife and I, she actually was she's divorced in England, still waiting on a house sale there, and I kind of lost everything in my past, divorce. And we're working together because we believe in a mission, and we're putting together. So we've basically been going from one booking to another, from place to place, without our own home. We've been basically on the road for almost 2 years this coming November.
Wow.
And everything yes, and it's by the graces of Spirit that opens the door for the next and the next location. And so everything we're saving, we're putting into that spiritual center. But here's the amazing thing. It's not going to have members. It's going to have friends and associates. We already have our bylaws. It's going to set precedents, because we find that so many problems with many of the spiritual churches and centers, because of the bylaws, that's what destroys themselves in the first place. So what we're trying to do is set something that we have people that are welcome to come as friends, associates, to participate, to help out in any way they feel inspired. And we're not going to own anything except for our own modest little home on a separate piece of property there. But everything, when we made up our minds that everything that we have, we're going to pass on to the next generation that carry on with it. Because we're looking to leave something for the next generation and the next generation. A way of life, a way of teaching.
Well, this is wonderful, John. You're a real example because you really are dedicated to serving spirit rather than serving yourself. It's very exciting. And I own a healing center in Knoxville, Tennessee. So if ever this is on your path, please let me know, because we'd love you to come and teach and see clients at the center in Knoxville. You and your wife would be very welcome here.
Thank you, Steve. Actually, we'll be there. Yeah, we'll be in North Carolina and Norfolk, Virginia in June. And we do have openings, so we'll talk about that later if you like. And I could, I could send you all of my courses, my wife Greta's courses.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and we'll connect and make that happen.
Wonderful, because we love working with like-minded people. You know, it's been an amazing several years. I'll give you an example. One time in Washington State, I was actually doing a transfiguration demonstration for not only spiritualist ministers and their congregation, but I also had a few woman ministers with us and their congregation, and they all seen spirit, and not just transfiguration, but materialization as well. And talk about high energy. I've had ministers from other Christian faiths approach me for training. And here's the beauty of our organization. Whatever papers or credentials people have earned, we do not require anyone to surrender what they've earned. We believe that whatever you've earned, you keep. That's yours for the rest of your life. If you're seeking credentials in the future from us for healing, for mediumship, for teaching, for ministerial, we'll be happy to run people through the program, and we welcome them, because we're trying to bring something more unified and getting away from the prejudices, because we're finding that religion is being shaken up very severely in this day and age. Look at the shows, Ancient Aliens, what it's done, and look at many of our shows that are proving things to us. I've had my own proofs in the seance room, but how could people believe it until they experience it for themselves? So, like I said, that's the beauty of the center. We're going to have, we're looking forward to having diverse activities, welcoming mediums from all over the world and teachers to teach there, to participate, to be a part of something. Just like we've had the pleasure of going all over and making friends and building new bridges and helping people on their path. And that's the beauty of it. Even after we leave our events and our teaching experiences with each center, I always leave an open door. If people have questions about something, feel free to contact me, because that's our real passion, is helping others. Because there's a little secret in the method of my madness, Steve. I'll share it with you. I feel that the more people that we could train to be a higher caliber medium, whether it's mental or physical mediumship, they're going to help raise the bar, raise the standards. But here's the best part. Then we'll be sitting in their seances and talking to our spirit loved ones and guides and teachers ourselves. You know, after sitting for over 3,500 trumpet seances talking direct to spirit for 10 years, when my teacher passed away, that all those seances stopped. And to be honest, Steve, I could have lost an arm or a leg after that, you know what I mean? And as long as I could talk to spirit. But when that's taken away, all that beautiful guidance, but it comes in another way, through impressions, through their own, but talking direct, there's nothing like it.
It's exciting. So I want to ask you then, John, can you describe, you obviously do a lot of seances. Can you describe for us a seance? How does that work? How is it set up? What are the requirements, etc.?
Okay, I teach how to sit for the different gifts. I'm not fully developed. I'm not developed in trumpet or materialization, what I would call consistent. Okay, I've had trumpets move and levitate. I've sat in cabinets, in front of cabinets. We've had as many as 4 spirit at a time come out. To set up, what I've basically been doing is, when it comes to those more advanced gifts like materialization, it requires much more energy. So I kind of like to go with study groups, people that are knowledgeable, not apprehensive, the first-timers. But when it comes to transfiguration, it's fully developed, and it's actually happened in full daylight for up to 2 hours in full light, where everyone's seen the same thing, spirit transfiguring over my face at a rate of about 160 to 180 faces per minute. And it would last for an hour or 2 hours. I make it simple because I believe this way. I just put a black curtain, a velvet curtain, against a wall, and nothing behind it, just a wall. And I just put a small 7.5 watt bulb in a light fixture, hanging it from the ceiling at a 45-degree angle, concentrated on my face, and I just have it dimmed enough so that you see the outline of my face. I make it so simple, people can't believe it. I know a lot of mediums in Ireland and Wales couldn't believe it because they thought you'd need a cabinet, for the ectoplasm. And at first, it starts out, we open with prayer. I encourage people to be reverent, to pay their respects to all spirit that come through, because the more they speak, the more by their sound vibration they attract their own spirit loved ones. The amazing thing is, a lot of people will see 3, 4, 5 of their loved ones, but they'll look young. When you're quiet, you tend to pull on the energy. And when they see the spirit, they'll just keep flashing and flashing and flashing, and then it'll start to slow down, and it's like trance will take over, or channeling. I could remember sometimes the channeling, but the trance, I don't remember anything. And they'll speak direct, sometimes reach out and shake their hand if the energy's compatible, but I pack them in almost knee to knee. Sometimes as many as 40, 50 people, and they can all see the same thing. But like I said, each seance is different because all the people, they bring in different energies each and every time. But I would love to do a demonstration for you in your center, if you'd like, with that transfiguration.
Absolutely, yes, we would love it, for sure. Please come.
But I'm more than happy to explain how to sit and develop the techniques, because I'm one of those few that believe in helping them, helping mediums develop and give them tools to develop. It's sad, many times most of your mediums don't teach others anymore. It's basically self-interest, but that's their path. There are so many people with natural abilities. Steve, I've been in awe for some of the people I've read for. When Spirit shows me their gifts, and I see that energy, and I say to myself, oh my God, if you only knew your potential, the help that you could help humanity. It's a beautiful gift, many of them. They're all great.
Well, you sound fantastic, John. We definitely want you to come and visit. It would be an honor to have you with us. And I want to ask you then, do you travel all over the US?
Yes. Actually, from here, tomorrow we'll be at the Jamar Enlightenment Center for the next 3 days in Palm Beach, Florida. And then we're going to be working on some projects in between. And then the La Harmony Metaphysical Chapel in Tampa, Florida, the third weekend. And then we have to go right to Maine to the Pinpoint of Light Spiritualist Church and Camp to work there and serve there. We're teaching an intensive 7-hour workshop that I've designed that really brings the confidence and the proof of mediumship right out in people. It's kind of like a boot camp thing where we go through a little training, and then we go through guided meditations and more progressive exercises. And before you know it, people are seeing remote viewing and opening up all of their psychic senses at once, and actually seeing the spirit themselves and amazed. And then, let's see, New England, the Midwest, and then back to California in October, California, Washington State. So, yes, we're going to be traveling all over, but actually I have some friends up there in Murfreesboro, Tennessee,
yes,
Unionville, and so we're planning on visiting with them. So I'll send you the info if you'd like, and
Absolutely.
let you look at.
Sure. Let's get it organized, John. That would be wonderful. That would be really, really great. And how long, John, would you say it takes for a person to develop the ability for physical mediumship?
Many times, the amazing thing, I found the discovery. The old days, when I was going through what they call chemicalizations, where we would sit in trumpet seances, and Spirit would do chemicalizations on us, where, for example, for trance, we would sit in a cabinet one at a time, and it was like, if you can imagine the worst flu, where you had nauseousness, the shakes, the dry heaves, everything, it was like going through that type of chemicalization for 45 minutes and not complaining, even thinking of complaining. And we went through that training for years, the different chemicalizations with Spirit that they pull from the energy of the medium. I'm finding now that even my transfigurations, everyone in your group will benefit. And the amazing thing is, it's not just seeing the spirit faces or the materializations up front. The people in the back rows can actually see the ectoplasm forming, and instead of seeing the materialized figures, they can see those, but sometimes they'll see a mist and up to 12, 13 spirit actually walking through them. They'll see them walking amongst the people. We've actually had people in the front row in Temple Heights Spiritual Camp in Maine. The front sitters put their hands right into the ectoplasm, and the amazing thing, everybody, the whole entire row, felt the set of spirit hands touching them at the other end from the ectoplasm. People receive chemicalizations, and how do you know that? You'll feel an intense cold chill. You'll feel like a dizziness, like your head being pulled forwards and backwards, which is producing an undulatory energy wavelength that's necessary for trance. Your arms and legs may be heavy. If you feel that, you're going through a chemicalization. When you open your channel, even if you're just an impressional medium, you can actually open your clairvoyance up wide open by sitting in those sessions. Now, here's the best part. If you have a group of people that are in there that require healing, the amazing thing is Spirit will pull the energy of the group and give that energy to help those people in need of healing. And how do they know? They will feel intense heat in specific organs and parts of their body. I mean, we had a lady one time in Florida that had kidney disease, and her kidney was so far on fire that you could put your hands 3-4 inches from her kidney, and you could feel the heat radiating. The next time we did another seance, she felt spirit hands probing all over, and her kidney disease has been cured. So it is really a laboratory, and we really look forward to you experiencing it, and everybody in your group, because it's like an eye-opener. It's beyond just seeing spirit. There's a lot that happens. It's like your spirit guides, our spirit guides are all working together to benefit all the sitters right there.
Well, I want to ask you as well, John, about your health, because my colleague Brenda's asking about any health issues for the people practicing the physical mediumship. We've heard that it can take quite a toll on the medium.
I found actually there's ways to build up that stamina and that power, and you could actually build it up. And I encourage people, when you're going for the gifts, to build that stamina. Like I found most physical mediums can easily do 20, 25 half-hour deep readings in a day, easy. Or 55, maybe 75 spirit messages all at once. It's like a different stamina, but basically we're finding that for transfiguration, we've had materialization, even to trumpet levitating. There were times Spirit didn't even have to take me into trance. The energy is higher than it was of yesterday. The key is we have to go to that same level of reverence that the mediums did in the days of old. And holding it sacred, going beyond the hype and all of that, to make it a spiritual experience. That's the key. I'll give you a prime example. I'll never forget the trumpet seances with Reverend Tingley were so developed that I was like a cabinet tender, an assistant. So when all the sitters were in, I was the last one to actually close the lights, lock the door, and then sit down. Well, before I could sit down, those trumpets would be levitating and sticking to me, often disorienting me in the dark that I'd trip. But I'll never forget an instance when I was actually calling up the Lord's Prayer, and I was saying it rather quickly. And Mabel, the gatekeeper, came in, and she said, if you can't say it with feeling and meaning, don't say it at all. Back then I was a student for the ministry, and so she made me recite the Lord's Prayer with her twice, because many people think, they're just going to say the prayer and do the routine. Make it sacred. That's what they taught me, because when you make it sacred, you're bringing a higher energy in. Just like, for example, healing. We all know what happens when we just say the prayer, nothing happens. But then when we say it with feeling and compassion, what happens? Our right hand usually gets extremely hot, our left hand gets cold. Just a simple example of the power of prayer. That's the key that we must never forget, because to enter that gateway with Spirit, that's the first step right there, is our intentions. They must be in the most sincerest and in the highest reverent way, not just for the phenomena. Because the way Spirit works is we're given tests throughout that whole process of patience and perseverance. We're being tested on like what we're really there for. And if it's for self, most of your physical mediums, if they're self-oriented, very seldom develop those gifts. You notice that. They'll stay with the psychic and the mental mediumship, but very seldom when it becomes of self do they go any further. And that's the thing. We came in this world with nothing, Steve, and we're going to leave this world with nothing. Like my teachers would say, there are no pockets and shrouds.
Yeah, we just take our growth with us, don't we?
Yes, we do. And we take that love with us, but our rules change from the other side. Like many times people have difficulty, for example, finding closure because of a loved one. But many times what we don't realize is each of us make a contract in how long our life is going to be, sometimes short for specific lessons and experiences. And yet they all interact with everyone along that way. But when we go on the other side, I viewed my father as over the years, I developed a relationship with my father. I used to call him Dad. But over time, I realized that he was in higher progression, studying to be a spirit doctor. So I realized that I could no longer hold those claims as a son would to his father, make any demands like, you need to do this for me or that. I realized that he played his role in this life, and he has his own right to higher progression. So I merely call him Dr. Lilek now, not Dad anymore.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's
John,
a beautiful transition.
It's been wonderful to have you with us, John. I really mean that. You're a wonderful guy and fascinating man. And it's been a real honor to have you with us. It's been a very, very interesting interview, John. I'd love you to come back on the show in future, and would love to have you come to my healing center in Knoxville. So I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us, John.
Thank you, Steve. It's my pleasure, and it's been an honor, and always happy to help, and feel free to, I'd love to do another show and come to your center. So we'll talk about that, soon. All right.
Yes, wonderful. I'll be in touch, John, and thank you so much for being with us. It was great.
Thank you, and God bless, and wishing all listeners all the best and higher spiritual development, and may that peace and happiness be abundant in each and every one.
Thank you, John, and God bless to you too.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye, John.
Hello, my name is Rez Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers. Get access. Psychic access. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.